This is Sunrise Sunset, the Jewish Family in Transition, and I'm Audrey Gordon. My guests today are Daniel Silverstein, Assistant Executive Director of the Council for Jewish Elderly, and Phyllis Mitzen, Supervisor of the Family Support Service Program for the Council of Jewish Elderly. And as you might imagine, today our topic is the Jewish elderly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I have a 90-year-old grandmother who has to be placed. My aunts and my father are in anguish over the fact that their mother cannot live alone, has to now go into some kind of a nursing home. They live in small condominiums or they live away. This must be a fairly common problem that you encounter in your work with the Jewish elderly. Is this something that sounds familiar to you?
Yes, it does. It's not uncommon for people to get to that point where they can no longer live independently. But what's a little bit interesting about that is that the number of people in nursing homes is a lot less than we tend to think about.
That's true.
The estimate is approximately 5% of the elderly are ever in nursing homes at any one time, which is a very small number. So that when problems arise with families and their parent, the option no longer is simply she or he has to go into a nursing home. There are a variety of choices. One of the things that the Council for Jewish Elderly has been able to do is to develop a whole range of those options so that people don't go into a nursing home until that's the appropriate choice, and that there are ways for people to stay in the community longer through a variety of different supports.
Phyllis, you have a new program, Family Support, that the Council is initiating. What option is this? What is the Family Support Program?
Well, the Family Support Program is an option that's intended to expand the family's capability of taking care of that elderly person in their home, or expanding the family, if you will, of an elderly person who may not have the family supports out there, by finding families or finding individuals who might like to live with that elderly person. So there's kind of two components to the program.
You match up people to come in and live with an elderly parent or person.
Right, or person. Or they might want to have the elderly person come in and live
Where
with
do you
them.
get the people who want to live with the elderly?
We try to do a lot of publicity, and we try to talk to people about this as an option. We also try to talk to elderly people themselves who might want to share, combining people's strengths and weaknesses so that they might be able to maintain themselves out in the community.
Might this other person be someone who also lives alone and needs to either work or share expenses?
Correct. That's correct.
Might they be someone who was perhaps also elderly but more mobile than the other person?
Exactly. We try to assess the needs and strengths of both the client and the caregiver, if you will, the people who are out there who have needs, and also what their strengths are. And by knowing these people fairly well, we're able to match them up.
You're teaming roommates.
Yes, we are. We're teaming roommates. We're making matches.
What kind of supervision does the council do besides making the match?
Well, we are able to help monitor the relationships after the people are matched up. We are available by phone. We will go in and do some counseling around the issues of learning to live with one another. We also have a respite component so that, okay, let me explain respite. Respite, when a caregiver is taking care of a client on a full-time basis, an elderly person, we know that that can be a wearing job. We know that that can create fatigue and stress
And burnout.
and burnout.
Oh, sure.
Exactly. So the capability of the program to provide a worker who can go in and relieve that caregiver for a period of time, we feel allows the caregiver to come back refreshed and able then to continue the caregiving
So they can
role.
take periodic breaks.
Exactly.
Is there a fee basis for this, for the caregiver?
Right now, right now there is not a fee. There will be a fee. There will be a fee attached to this starting in the summer. Right now, the program is funded under a government title, so we do not have to charge a fee for it.
But
What-
the people that are matched do work out an arrangement with the other person that
Yes.
they're living with, and that's between the two of them.
When you say work out an arrangement in terms of the expenses?
The expenses,
living
of-
expenses?
living expenses, and so forth.
And is there another component to this program that has to do with people who don't require live-in help? Or live-in caregivers? I mean, where they can go out, where perhaps they're living on their own, but need a family support system of some kind?
Well, this program really is a matching program. We really are working with people who are matching up and who do need to live with somebody. For those people in the community who do not need to live with somebody, who are living independently, CJE has a range of services that are provided that allow for that person to remain in the community. Services such as home-delivered meals, community aids to provide some personal care for them, homemakers, housekeepers, chore services.
What other options beside family support program and nursing home would you say that the council can offer?
Well, the council takes a fairly optimistic point of view about older people, and that they
Well, I
can be
think they should.
supported. Yes, that they can be supported to remain in the community. That there's a lot of strengths to build on, and that what's necessary are those things that can help them and their families keep them as active and as independent as they can possibly be. Part of it is the provision of things like home-delivered meals and someone to go taking them for a walk or go shopping for them. Bus transportation is another service. Nursing care service in the home. Social work counseling for the individual or their family and sometimes together. And a variety of other kinds of things that will help people stay in the community, including drop-in centers, noonday meal programs, where there's a meal served every day, and a daycare program. Daycare is a program for those people where there's a little less independence. There is somebody at home at night, on the weekends, but during the day they need a place to be, and they really can't participate in the senior center activities. There's a little bit more problems that they have. So this program is set up to provide them to be in a place all day long and getting a variety of things, including a meal and physical and occupational therapy.
Does that have places to lie down and
If
facilities for
necessary.
people who are perhaps more physically infirm but not totally bedridden?
Yeah, there is most all of the people that come to that program are brought by transportation, specialized transportation. Many of them are in using some sort of an aid in walking or wheelchair. But they're able enough to be able to come out of the house and then be at home where there is somebody to care for them, at least over the weekends and in the evenings. In addition to that, the council has been able to develop a variety of housing options. One of the major problems for many people is finding reasonable cost housing, particularly with the condo conversions and a variety of other things that a large apartment or home is no longer a viable place for the person, and they need a place to live. We have 4 apartment buildings that are operated by the agency that can accommodate only approximately 250 people, and the need is far greater than that. In addition to that, there's a housing resource center which tries to match people to available units. We keep a track of what apartments are available in the community, what the conditions of those apartments are, what kind of amenities they have, and try to help people find those kinds of places to live. And in addition to that, another housing option that's been developed is group living, which is an option for people who can no longer live independently but don't need the nursing home.
People who can get around, who can do a little cooking for themselves, who can take care of
Who
themselves.
can take a little bit care of themselves, and so yes, the way these programs are set up, there is one facility in Evanston called the Weinfeld Residence, which is a very unique facility. We just opened 3 months ago a brand new facility in Skokie called the Robinow Residence. People have their own room, their own bath. They share a kitchen with either 2 or 4 people for breakfast and snacks. Dinner and lunch is served communally and prepared by a cook, but they participate in the serving of the food, the cleaning up, the planning of the menu. And there is someone there at night who is not on call as a nurse, but is available in case there's an emergency.
So you created a new family for them.
Exactly, and all of the things that are good about that are also
Bad about that?
not bad about that, but are going on within a family setting.
In other words, there's the same kind of bickering, and where's my lipstick, and you're in the
Well-
bathroom too long, and I don't want to watch that television program, and all the things that go on.
Exactly.
In the family.
Individual bathrooms have been provided in the new facility, which
Which helps that
helps.
problem.
Yes.
But
helps
if you
one of
sit
the
there
problems.
when the dietitian is planning the menu and trying to determine what should be served, you're in
We
for
have
a
all
big
these
fight.
cooks, all these people who used to cook
Exactly.
and know exactly how to do it.
That's
and
right.
Dietitian can't be as old as they are. They know more.
Exactly. But that's what's really good about this kind of a setting, that the things that go on during the day are real life family activities, even though it is a change in lifestyle. There is a whole different sense of sharing that they're involved with that is new for them and for all of them, and in many cases for the agency to set up a program like this.
There are lots of stereotypes about the aged people, that they're sick all the time, that they don't think as well, that they're bordering on senility, that they're so rigid that they can't change. They're stereotypes. I mean, we can
Right.
classify that. Don't you find that people age pretty much as their personality dictates, that they are just a continuation of whatever they were 30 or 40 or 50, and that the way in which they cope with their aging is the way in which they've coped with all of their lives? I mean, do you see anything about aging or elderly that you say that is a universal characteristic? I haven't found it yet. Maybe you have.
No, I haven't found any. I think the universal characteristic is exactly what you're talking about, and that is that people age very individually. It's a very, very heterogeneous population. And I think one of the exciting parts of working with the elderly is you really just never know what you're going to find. I think the universal thing is that all people have gray hair, and if you're going to stereotype them, you can say, well, that gray-haired lady, but if you talk to that gray-haired lady, you'd find that she's quite different than the one sitting down the...
Are most of your population women?
Well, yes, most of the population that we service are women, primarily because the age of the population we serve tend to be 70, 75 and over, where the statistics are very clear that the women
Yes.
have outlived the men.
Do you have an absolute bottom age? And I can't imagine that you have a top.
No, there's no top. The bottom age is 60 for most programs. The average age, as I said, is in the 70s. The average age in our housing programs is about 76. The average age in our group living home is 81. And the average age in our new Lieberman residence, which is a new nursing care facility just recently opened as well, is approximately 84. So you can see that what's happened is that the notion that you go from independence to nursing home at age 65 when you start getting your Social Security check just doesn't happen. People are, the elderly, by the way, I think are the most rapid growing minority
Well, we're living longer and having less babies, and the median age is rising, and very soon, perhaps within the next generation, the elderly will be a very powerful voting bloc, which will be interesting for your services and your funding.
Yeah.
It will be nice, especially since I will be getting up there and will be interested in having all of those things provided.
Well, part of what we're talking about, though, is also thinking about planning for ourselves, because what we're talking about doing, while we think about these services being so progressive for people, it really is what people ought to have, and it really has taken many years for that kind of attitude to come along. It's about time.
Let's talk for a minute about society and changes of attitudes. 100 years ago, people did not have the option nor the thought of taking an aged person out of their setting. It was assumed that you would take care of your aged parents, that you would take them into your home if necessary. My 90-year-old grandmother took care of her mother till she died at 88, totally bedridden and arthritic, and my aunts remember turning her in the bed. It was just an everyday accepted occurrence. Many of the elderly today are bitter or resentful, perhaps, that their children don't take care of them in the way that they took care of their parents. Do you find that to be true, not true? What about that statement?
Well,
Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I think that we do find that the children are concerned. I think that it's, that to generalize and say that the children and the parents are not together, that the children are not taking care of the parents, if you will, is just, is
Another
not
myth.
Is another myth, exactly. The children and the parents, families are concerned about one another. The fact that there are so many more people growing to an old age means that this puts an added burden on a family which is smaller in size, if you will, and which is also more scattered all over the country.
Also, so you have less living space. They don't live in the big old houses and don't have places to park their aged parents either.
True. So I think that we have a new set of circumstances that we're learning more about all the time. I think in an agency like CJE, we are constantly looking and exploring ways that an agency might help the family to better serve the elderly relative.
Yeah, I would just add that all of the studies show continually that the family is still the first place you go when you need help. Agencies, no matter how much activity they provide, are still not the primary caregiver. The family is. Where the agencies can help is in some of the areas to support that family relationship. So that for a family where the children could provide the meals, if they went over to their mother's house and did the cooking and so forth, the emotional and mental anguish that goes with that because of the neglect they may give to their own family or to their own lives leads to a more difficult relationship, so that if we can provide the meals, then that family is freed up to then keep their emotional ties and strengthen the family rather than take away the responsibility.
Isn't it also true that it doesn't make any difference how old your mother or your father is, but the relationship that you have with them and that you developed from a very early time may still be the character of the relationship if you didn't get along with them very well, if you never separated from them, that these things will show up even more under the stress of the aging parent? Don't you have to work with families to get them to understand the nature of their relationships to their parent and to work out their guilt?
Yes, I think that's what you said earlier, and this as well, that the person, the older person, is still the same person.
Yes.
Who they were 80 years ago.
Right.
And as a parent, they're still the same parent. So that the relationship between the parent and child is that same relationship. What comes into play are a variety of environmental factors the physical disability that the parent may have. Often now, because we're dealing with this kind of a population, the children are also in the midst of their own personal
Yes.
change.
Sure.
Many of them
Usually
are,
midlife crises at about the
Exactly.
time that your parents have elderly crises.
in some cases, you may be verging on retirement
True.
and then dealing with your parent. So there's a whole change in your own lifestyle.
Well, you may have been looking forward to traveling for a year or certainly going to a warmer climate for a while, and you have now this aged parent that requires your time. You can be legitimately resentful.
Mhm. Yeah, there are
Mhm.
problems that come up that you have to deal with, but that's no different than if that same person had problems with their children.
That's true, but if you think about the middle-aged couple who has now finished paying off the college bills and maybe the last wedding and suddenly sits back and says, and then suddenly mother or father appears on the horizon as their next taking care of project, I can understand a very
Mhm.
normal feeling of being trapped. When
To
are we
refer
ever
to-
going to get
Mhm.
time for ourselves? When am I ever going to get time? I think it's not unreasonable to say that for women, the caregiving tasks are often allotted to them. Would you say that that was correct? I
think
mean, sons come and they're dutiful and they may be even financially supportive, but somehow women are at the bedsides.
You're right, and as a matter of fact, there's a term being developed called the woman in the middle,
Yes.
as the one who is still the nurturer of their parent, their children, and dealing with their own personal daily life changes as well.
What are some of the things that you find the elderly people needing most from other people in their environment?
Well, in working with the people in the family support program, we find that people's needs tend to fall. The first two things we hear are, number one, people are looking for companionship. There's a great deal of loneliness, and this has to do with it doesn't matter if people are living with families or people who are living out in the community. Those people living in the community who come to us are seeking companionship. They're very, very lonely and feel very isolated. And the second need is financial. These are people who are hurting from having to make it on Social Security. So those are the two things that I hear over and over again.
There's an interesting study, I forget the authors, they'll have to forgive me, that showed that people who had a confidant were people who were able to live normally in the community, and that this was a significant dynamic, that the elderly who had a confidant, someone, and usually someone within the family, but that wasn't the critical issue, that they had somebody to talk to, and share themselves with, and that the others, people who wound up in psychiatric communities, were people who did not have a confidant. So part of your
So it's
program
being borne out.
is providing a confidant.
Right, exactly.
And also to build in within the community that they live, part of what I was describing earlier, tries to build in enough of a support system in the community that they're living. Many of them are in a community that they were in for many years, where they had all their friends and their family grew up and so forth. And the isolation is also that their neighborhood is no longer what it was, and that the kinds of supports that were there earlier are no longer there. That's part of what we've tried to do with this whole range of activities that are not necessarily personal care services like Meals on Wheels and so forth, but things that relate to the neighborhood that they live in and providing that kind of support.
Let's take a not uncommon case. Father has just died, late 70s, early 80s. They lived in a modest-sized house for many, 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 many years, or even an apartment for many, many years. Daughter comes now to mother, perhaps a week after the funeral, 2 weeks, and says, now you'll come to me. What would you say to such a family?
Well, the first question really would be, what does mother say when the daughter says, you're coming to live with me?
But you won't have to be alone anymore.
Well, in many cases, what we find are the mother saying, no, I'm not going to live with you.
What I think most people don't realize in the daughter's position, and what I'm trying to get out of you as dialogue from your experience with the elderly, is that many people don't want to move in with their children, and that they need their own spaces.
Right. I think there are a couple of issues. I think that that's absolutely correct. I think the situation in terms of asking mom so soon after the funeral, or making those quick decisions so soon after the funeral, also can lead to a lot of difficulty. And you're absolutely correct. If mom has lived in her community, her supports are there, with daughter continuing to be a support. And I think it's important for families to step back and to not act on their own sense of panic about how mom's going to make it out there. Mom has to be part of the planning process. And we have the other situation of mom saying, Dad's dead now, I want to move in with you. And daughter saying, but I have no room, what do I do? People have to sit down and plan together, I think.
Yeah, and tied to that is also a lot of things that relate to this whole issue of where they're going to be living. There may be room in that home, but the home is in a far distant suburb. Mother doesn't drive. There isn't any other accessible resources for her. So that while we may go back to that old notion that children should take care of their parents by having them live with them, that may not be the most appropriate option for both.
Moving an aged parent into a home perhaps where there are teenagers who have loud music, or the home is not set up for them to walk around with easily. Those things have to be looked at.
They have to be looked at. They're not, may be negative, they may not. It might be something that the grandmother has been looking forward to. But those are kinds of issues that have to be looked at, discussed, and determined as to what is really the best possible choice.
If people wanted to get a clearer view, or perhaps some literature on some of the services that the Council for the Jewish Elderly offers in the Metropolitan Chicago area, where would they write?
They would write.
They wouldn't?
Yes, they would write or call. The Council for Jewish Elderly's office is at 1015 Howard Street in Evanston. 60202 is the zip code. The phone number is 973-4105. The agency is set up in such a way that phone calls for any kind of request will be responded to at that phone call. And we'll try and do what we can with any kind of questions or problems that come to us.
I know that you have an excellent track record. I mean, the Council for Jewish Elderly has done more things in this area for the aged than almost any other agency in the entire city, and that the Jewish community has much to be proud of in terms of the work of the council. And I've always supported and loved the things that you do.
Well, I think that's a kind of an interesting perspective on how the Jewish community perceive the services for the elderly. CJE is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year, which means that 10 years ago none of this existed.
Right, and we're not going to exist very much longer on this program. I want to thank you both for coming, Dan Silverstein and Phyllis Mitzen for the Council of Jewish Elderly. If you have any questions, please write to the Jewish Federation, 1 South Franklin, Chicago, Illinois. This is Audrey Gordon for Sunrise Sunset. Thank you very much.